There's a certain kind of man who builds nations not to serve humanity, but to prove he can outlive it. In the Phoenician scheme, that man is Zsa-Zsa Korda, and what he's really constructing isn't an empire, but a last-minute redemption that may or may not arrive.
Hey, if this got you thinking even a little, hit like and subscribe. Let's keep going.
Wes Anderson returns with the Phoenician scheme, a film that at first glance feels like a vintage caper dressed in post-war aesthetics and pastel palettes. But beneath its symmetrical frames and stylized absurdity lies something more elusive, a confrontation with legacy, mortality, and the quiet terror of being forgotten. Benicio del Toro leads the story as Zsa-Zsa Korda, a European industrialist whose projects span continents, regimes, and moral boundaries. With death closing in through a series of failed assassination attempts, Korda pulls his estranged daughter, Liesel, Mia Threapleton, into his sprawling business empire. What begins as a logistical maneuver slowly becomes a desperate grasp at connection and at salvation. But like all Anderson protagonists, Korda doesn't evolve in dramatic arcs. Instead, he shuffles through surreal detours, bureaucratic princes, philosophical plane crashes, absurdist afterlife tribunals, and a shoebox full of regrets. And somewhere amid these, the film suggests a truth about men like him. They mistake legacy for love and control for meaning. Set in a fictionalized 1950s Levantine country called Phoenicia, the film follows Korda, who, after surviving another airborne assassination, decides to name Liesel, a convent-bound novitiate, as his heir. He promises her closure, the identity of her mother's killer. She, skeptical and severe, agrees to accompany him on a cross-continental mission to secure funding for his grand infrastructure project, which has been undermined by inflation, espionage, and old enemies. They're joined by Bjorn, Michael Cera, whose role is part comic relief, part philosophical compass. The trio traverses an eclectic network of elites and oligarchs, played by Anderson regulars like Tom Hanks, Bryan Cranston, and Jeffrey Wright, in scenes that alternate between political satire and screwball theater. The journey is stylized, yes, but never hollow, for beneath the whimsy lies a slow-building reckoning. Korda begins to glimpse something he spent decades suppressing: the fragility of his power and the emptiness of its rewards. And Liesel, despite her armor of principle, begins to wrestle with the complexity of inheriting a legacy she detests. Anderson's screenplay is deceptively chaotic. It bounces between tones, satire, drama, surrealism, yet holds itself in firm structure. The narrative is linear in motion, but layered in theme, reminiscent of Matryoshka dolls, a surface-level plot about money and murder, concealing deeper inquiries into control, inheritance, and guilt. Dialogue is quintessentially Andersonian, clipped, rhythmic, oddly tender. Characters speak not with naturalism, but with precision, as if every line is a microthesis. This works especially well with Liesel, whose words feel like quiet indictments wrapped in wit. She becomes the film's moral backbone, but not its moralizer. Her conflict isn't just with her father's sins, but with her own growing complicity. Korda's arc is less a transformation and more a collapse. He doesn't change, he frays, and that, in Anderson's world, is enough. The screenplay doesn't excuse him, nor does it redeem him. It simply follows his spiral with unsettling empathy. Anderson's direction is, as always, a masterclass in visual grammar. But here, it feels more haunted. Every plane crash, every symmetrical room, every surreal afterlife sequence echoes one idea: that order is a coping mechanism, not a truth. Korda builds with precision, but death arrives in chaos. His empire is symmetrical, his heart is not. The film's philosophical core is subtle, yet persistent. It asks, what remains of a man who believes ownership is love? What happens when control, the god of his life, begins to dissolve under the weight of mortality? These questions aren't stated, they're embedded in the shoeboxes of memory, in the shadows of fatherhood, in the silence between Korda and Lysol. Even the metaphysical detours, especially the black and white judgment scenes with a godlike Bill Murray, are less comedic than allegorical. They represent the mind's desperate attempt to justify itself when no external punishment arrives. A reckoning without consequence, just conscience. Del Toro gives one of the finest performances of his career, not because he transforms, but because he refuses to. His portrayal of Korda is all restraint, a man clinging to order as his internal walls crumble. His gravitas is matched by Threapleton, whose Lysol is icy, honest, and utterly magnetic. She is not a vessel for redemption, but a mirror, and perhaps the only character in Anderson's canon to remain truly incorruptible. Michael Cera's Bjorn adds levity without undercutting the tension. He operates like a Socratic fool, asking questions that sound silly but cut to the bone. The supporting ensemble is tight, vivid, but always secondary. This is Korda's story, or perhaps his elegy. The Phoenician scheme is not Anderson's most emotionally resonant film. It doesn't strive for the tenderness of Moonrise Kingdom or the ache of the Royal Tenenbaums, but it may be his most quietly devastating, because it recognizes that some men, despite their late attempts, are beyond redemption, not from evil, but from emptiness. Zsa-Zsa Korda is a man trying to build permanence out of profit, to engineer love from legacy. The tragedy is not that he fails, it's that he almost believes he won.